All right, so our first guest speaker is Eben Jenkins. Eben is the founder of the Certeon Group, a consulting group advising companies on video and communication markets. Eben previously directed worldwide video selling, the video business unit, and mobile phone testing for Tektronix just down the road. Eben has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Rice University and an MBA from UC Berkeley. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you. I'm not used to using a microphone in this small room, but I'm guessing we are wired for sound, so I should probably be using this. All right. It's unfortunate I don't get to yell quite as much since I have a microphone in front of me. So, yeah, that's true. So, good morning, everybody. I appreciate particularly those sitting in the front two rows. That's great. It's not even 8 o'clock in the morning, so thanks for showing up and being attentive. A couple of things I wanted to cover today, and the first thing, I guess I got to break some bad news to you. I have absolutely no slideware, no PowerPoint slides, no Google. Sorry. You'll just have to listen to me drone on to you. I hope it actually turns into good news as well, because my intent in doing that is, I'll talk about a few things. I would truly appreciate it if you've got questions along the way. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't make this offer, but if you do have questions along the way, raise your hand, let me know, because I'd far rather have this be a little bit of a discussion as opposed to me just in a boring monotone up here talking for another 20 minutes, 25 minutes. The two kind of things I wanted to cover today, as I understand what you all are hoping to get out of these events this week. Probably a third of this talk will be a little bit about giving you all some sense of the different sorts of technical work I did in various roles along the way that got me to where I am today. That's maybe a third of it. 2/3 of it is probably going to be a little bit more about how the heck did I end up getting here to begin with. And I'll do that talking a little bit about kind of the school choices I made. I don't mean, which school I went to, but there are various times in your life where you have to make some choice. And I want to talk a little bit about that and hopefully share perspective. And I don't mean this to sound frightening or certainly make it sound like it's all a throwaway, but a lot of it's random. And that's really what I'm going to talk about as well, because I know if I had been 17, 18 years old, sitting in a classroom, and of course this was in ancient times for me, and somebody said, hey, this is what you're going to be doing when you're my age, I wouldn't have believed it, nor would I have believed how I got there. So that's a little bit of what I'll talk about today. Before I do, just a quick summary so I get some sense. How many seniors? All right, very good. Juniors? Anyone below junior? Sophomore, freshman? Wow, okay, so it's kind of an even mix through this class. I don't know if this applies to you all. It certainly applied to me. I will be the first to admit, when I was a freshman or sophomore in high school, I didn't have a clue as to what I thought I would want to go do. By the time I was a junior in high school, I think I knew that I was supposed to know exactly what I probably wanted to go study, because by then I'm thinking about what schools maybe to apply to and all that sort of thing. And of course, by senior year, I was just more interested in getting done with senior year, and the rest of it wasn't quite as important as perhaps it should have been. But I will tell you, for me, in my junior, senior year, I was still loving science classes. Again, it was ancient history. When I was growing up, computer science was not yet a well-developed set of courses. I loved computers. I had my own personal computer. I'd saved up my money mowing yards to buy my own personal computer. And the classes that they offered at the high school just were not interesting at all. It was more about how to use a computer, and I didn't really need that. So I didn't take any computer science classes. They didn't really have much meaning to me. I think I would have loved it if they had been offered at the high school level. So for me, it was science. And I spent a lot of time doing chemistry and physics. I love both of them. And had you asked me as a junior or a senior in high school, I would have told you I was going to be a research chemist. That would have been my answer. And I applied to colleges thinking, hey, I want some school that's got a decent chemistry program, but also engineering as well. All right, I picked my school, off I went, and within my first year, at least where I went to school, you didn't have to pick your intended major until you were a sophomore, second year at college. So first year, I'm doing this chemistry thing, and I'm realizing, the more I talk to people, I realize, hey, if I do chemistry, then to do a career in chemistry, I'm probably going to have to get not only a master's, but a doctorate. And I just wasn't sure I wanted to do that. So I started to tilt. I started tilting towards engineering, and I thought electrical engineering, and because I loved computers, and I liked understanding, more importantly, how things worked. And I gotta say, that's a common theme for me throughout my life. I like finding out how things work. So that's why I started going down the path of electrical engineering. And I think it was about a third of the way through my sophomore year, I was taking this course called Digital Logic Design. And I hated it. I mean, I just did not like it. And you guys know more about that now than I did as a sophomore in college, but I will tell you, it didn't sink in well to my brain for whatever reason. So by this time I said, well, I pretty much want to be an engineer, but maybe this electrical engineering thing's not exactly what I want to do. I ended up, and to this day I can't really tell you how, I ended up choosing to be a mechanical engineer. So I went, you actually walked down to an office and signed a piece of paper that said, hey, this is what I want to do, and this is the course load I'm going to take. So I chose to become a mechanical engineer, and over the rest of my time in college, I really enjoyed some of the courses in thermodynamics, heat transfer, fluid dynamics, and that was largely because I thought, hey, designing airplanes would be about as cool as it gets. So there wasn't aerospace engineering where I went, there was fluids and air is a fluid, so you take enough fluid dynamics, you can go design airplanes. So that's what I did. I studied that, I graduated, I looked at a bunch of different places to go work, and one of the ones I went to was Bell Helicopter. Hey, helicopters be even more fun to design than an airplane. This is me talking. And I think Lockheed as well. They were doing something with NASA. And I was in Texas by this time near Houston, so NASA was a big deal. I didn't like either of them. I went and visited and talked to the people who worked there, and it just didn't sound all that interesting. So here's another random turn. I went and started to work in the petrochemical industry, designing big furnaces and heat exchangers for petrochemical plants. So these are the things that make plastics. These are the things that refine gasoline. In some cases, it was making pharmaceutical products, so making prescriptions on a small scale. But that was the sort of equipment that I designed. And I did that for a few years. You're beginning to hear a theme here. Some of you should be laughing. Hey, wait, he does things for like a couple of years and then it changes. I did it for a few years. The first 2 years I loved it. And it got a little boring. I will tell you one thing. Hopefully I won't offend anybody. The petrochemical industry is not the most aggressively innovative industry in the world. With good reason, because when things go wrong in a big petrochemical plant, they tend to blow up and blow up violently, and as a result, everyone is extremely safety conscious, and you go through week-long reviews after you complete a design on a piece of equipment, sitting in a room with 10 or 12 engineers, figuring out truly all the ways that thing can fail. what happens if this valve fails? What happens if this pipe gets disconnected? What happens if this temperature input is higher than you expected? And is it going to blow up? Is it going to hurt anybody? Is it going to cause an environmental disaster? So after a few years, you begin to realize, I'm not going to get to do a lot of terribly new design stuff. I'm going to get really good at designing a heat exchanger or a furnace or whatever it is, but I'm not going to get a blank sheet of paper and say, hey, go make something new. So I got restless. And I ended up going back to school again to get a business degree, which I really didn't want to do. Because this entire time, think my entire life, I had been studying science, I'd been studying math, I'd done engineering, I liked computers, and to be blunt, I didn't think there was really much to learn in business, right? It's just not the same. I went back kicking and screaming, but I did. I went to school. It was a 2-year program, and I will have to tell you, I learned far more than I ever expected to in the business program. Really useful stuff, things and approaches I still use today, even managing my own finances that otherwise I just had no exposure to when I was studying science, when I was studying engineering. So that was a surprise to me, a really big surprise. But as I'm going through this program, I knew I still want to stay close to technology because kind of at the heart of me, I think everybody's going to figure out, and you will, you may not know it now, but you'll figure out, hey, there's something about you that kind of makes you tick. And for me, it's still being associated with making some product or having some ownership around some product and developing something new. So I knew even though I'm doing this business stuff, I probably want to do something in high tech. So I studied high technology marketing, and that's how I ended up, I was in California at the time, and that's how I ended up coming up here and working with Tektronix, because there was this really unbelievable new technology evolving when I moved up here called mobile phones. I know it's hard to imagine mobile phones as an unbelievable new technology, but they were at the time. And so I started working in a new group at Tektronix that was selling equipment to the people that developed mobile phones, and no, Apple was not one of them at that time, and also that developed the networks that the cell phone, all the cell phone towers that you see lining the streets or in the buildings. And it was fantastic. I had a great time. And I'm not going to bore you with the entire rest of the career path, but I'll say, you know what? I worked and developed new products for testing mobile phones and base stations and networks, and I then moved over and did optical stuff, optical communications, meaning all of those fiber optic connections that you see going undersea from Europe to North America, and all of the equipment used to manage the data paths for fiber connectivity. And then ultimately, about 15 years ago, I got pulled into another group at Tektronix doing video. And what a great time it was to get pulled into doing video equipment, because of course, as you all definitely know, video has changed dramatically. 15 years ago, everyone was still watching TV. Today, I don't know, how many of you have watched TV in the past 2 days? If I had asked that question 15 years ago, of course everyone would have raised their hand. I'm surprised, and I'm not insulting you guys, I'm surprised that many of you have watched TV in the past 2 days, because a lot of what I do for video myself is now on this, or it's on a tablet. And the past 10 years in the video space has just been a huge amount of change, and I've enjoyed being a part of it. So what did I get to work on? What technologies did I get to work on? I want to share a little bit of that. So it's video compression and how to efficiently take a video signal that's captured at a camera, say at Super Bowl or at World Cup or whatever, get that processed, get the graphics added onto it, make sure it's legal video, get it compressed into various different formats for being transmitted, whether it's over satellite, whether it's over those optical cables, whether it's over IP connections. So it can then go to 3 or 4 different places. It can go to a broadcaster who's got a big antenna up on a hill, like we still have here today, and it can come out over television. Or it can go to a head end of Comcast, where they can put it in their Xfinity system and distribute it across the US. Or it can go to YouTube, and it can then be put in a file format, checked for compatibility, and chunked, as we call it, and then you can download it as you see fit, stream it, whatever. So we designed the equipment to do that. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I decided to leave Tektronix, and I started my own company that just consults with other companies that are trying to make that kind of equipment. And I have a business where I help them understand, a lot of times, hey, I'm in Europe and I want to understand how to sell my product in the US. Or I'm in Asia and I don't understand what technologies are important if I'm going to Europe. And so I work with these companies to help explain what's going on in the industry, help explain some of the technology, and help them get those products designed. So once again, kind of that common idea of you're going to learn over time what makes you tick personally. For me, it's still being associated with a product, and so that's what I do. So that is the longest resume review I think I've ever done. But I wanted to give you that background. I'm going to pause. Big challenge of the morning. Any questions? I dare somebody please ask me one question. Excellent.
So you said you worked with the video compression stuff with the World Cup and
Yep.
the other one I can't remember off the top of my head.
Super Bowl, but any of those, yeah, sure.
Did you ever work with any of the AR stuff that goes along with that?
Interestingly enough, I haven't. I know a number of people who have. So this is the augmented reality. So there's, how would I phrase this? In one regard, AR has been around for decades by virtue of the fact of the graphics overlays and additions that are done even on some of the good old-fashioned broadcast television stuff. So I guess I should more officially answer your question, yes, because I've worked with those companies, and it used to be very, very dedicated hardware that people sold that would process the video and then be able to put other elements onto that video before you could watch it. Of course, that area has just changed dramatically over the past 5-6 years, and I haven't done too much work yet, particularly on some of the software implementations and what's being done now on a more interactive basis. But yeah, it's fascinating. There's a lot of changes going on there. Yep.
Well, you said you work with Tektronix. What exactly does Tektronix even do?
That's a great question. So Tektronix is one of those companies that when you're at a party and somebody asks you, you almost cringe, because trying to explain it in a way that people are going to understand and enjoy, you just know this isn't going to go well. So I'll give it a try here. So Tektronix makes test equipment. All right. So at its most simple, you can think of like a multimeter where you're checking voltage or resistance or current. They make a little bit fancier test equipment, but that sort of stuff. They make oscilloscopes. I don't know if any of you have been exposed to oscilloscopes in any of the work that you've done here or maybe on the outside, which is basically a screen. It's an instrument that has a screen that shows how voltage changes over time. And you can use that to check if there's a certain signal that you were expecting chip to be sending out, it's not there. You can look at that sort of thing. But they also take that kind of core technology and then apply it really broadly. So for example, most recently my work I was doing in the video space, it was to make equipment that tested video signals. So we would sell and we would make products that looks like a little 1RU server, so really powerful PC. You put in a rack, but you'd hook up a 10 gigabit Ethernet cable to it, and it would automatically log in to all of the video streams that were on that 10 gig line, and in real time, so as it's going, check all of the audio and video quality and say, is the audio too loud, too soft? Is it muted when it shouldn't be muted? Does it have clicks or pops? Is the video, you guys have seen bad video streams, is it frozen? Is it blocky, right? You'll see little blocks pick up, or has it got a tear in the video? We'd make the equipment that would automatically hook up and test 2,000 video streams all at the same time. And companies we worked with would be like a Comcast or a Google for YouTube or some of their Google streaming services and that sort of thing. Yes?
Is the TV disappearing anytime soon?
I don't know. So how would I phrase this? The question was, is the TV disappearing anytime soon? And so I think absolutely you guys are the perfect example. How you interface with a television is completely different than how I worked with a television and what I expected out of a television 20 years ago. I expected mindless, sit back and watch it. Today that's just not the case. You at the very minimum expect to be able to pick what you want to see and when you want to see it, at a minimum. And I would argue you want to do more with the television in the future. So my answer to the question is yes and no. I think that passive television is just going to be less and less important. I think the television as a device, as a screen, has got a lot of longevity in it. I was just over in Asia 2 weeks ago on business. So I'll do a little survey here. This gets a little business intelligence from me as well. How many of you've got a television at home, I'm guessing. How many of you have an HD television? All right, good. How many of you have a 4K? Do you know if you've got a 4K television? Okay. That's pretty good, actually. That's pretty good. So I was just over in Asia, and I watched 16K television. I bring that up not saying you should wait for the Christmas sales and go try to buy a 16K television, but I say that because the question, hey, is the television still going to be around? I think as a viewing device, as a way to consume entertainment, yeah, it will be. Because I will tell you, in watching 8K and 16K on a screen that was about 88 inches diagonal, and it had 22.2 surround sound. So that means 22 speakers all around you with 2 low frequency effect speakers. It was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. I watched a rock concert and I watched a symphony concert. And it was the first time, and 88 inches sounds huge, and that is, but it's not crazy huge. You can still fit it in a room that's like a living room sized thing. I'm pointing. No, it's a little smaller than this. A little smaller than this. And you sit there and you watch those concerts. It's the first time I actually thought I'd rather watch it on the screen than be there in the audience. Because the sound is completely around you, and you can have that experience of, hey, I want to look at the drummer. No, wait, I want to look at the bass player. And you can just focus on whatever you wanted to and still enjoy it. It was pretty cool. So I think television as a business changing dramatically. What you expect out of television going to change a lot. A screen as a device, I think it's going to be around for a long time. That was an awfully long answer. Any other questions? Please.
Did you go to college?
Where? I went to school. The question was, where did I go to college? So I went to college at a small school in Houston called Rice University. And again, I picked them. If you remember the first part of this boring presentation, it was, hey, I might be interested in chemistry. They had a good chemistry department, but I think I might like engineering. They had a good engineering school, and they had just a wide variety because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do or what I wanted to study. And so that's one thing. I'm looking at the clock. That's really one thing I did want to mention, and I'll answer more questions, but I don't think I ever worked as a mechanical engineer. And I just wanted to make that point. I studied hard, really hard to get an engineering degree. I immediately went to work in the petrochemical industry, basically working as a chemical engineer, doing some mechanical design, but I was working in a chemical engineering company. And then think about that, I left that, I got a business degree, and then I went to work for basically Tektronix. What do they do? It's basically a doubly kind of electrical engineering company. And then I was a product manager, so I wasn't actually an engineer, but I was helping a team of engineers figure out, so what should this product look like? How big should it be? What stuff should it have in it? What should it do? What shouldn't it do? I never really worked as a mechanical engineer. And I guess the point I wanted to make is a couple. Number one, I do think there are certain career paths or certain areas of study that are really good for opening up a lot of different directions for you in the future. And I'm not here to say everyone needs to be an engineer, of course not. But engineering is good as a base from which you can jump off and do a lot of different things. I would say the exact same thing about computer science. It is a fantastic base upon which you can choose to work in a vast number of industries. You can be taking a computer science degree and you can be working in healthcare, you can be working in creative, you can be working for SpaceX, you can do a huge variety of things. It's fantastic. So I would keep that in mind. And the second point is, therefore, I want to make sure I phrase this correctly. I wouldn't get too wound up if you don't know exactly what it is you're going to ultimately go do. Kind of keep in mind the long game, where your interests are, and I would never deny those interests, but I also wouldn't be overly concerned when you make choices, whether it's where you go to school or what it is you're going to be studying, that is going to define you as a person forever and ever. Because there are a lot of random decisions along the way that you just have no way of knowing about. All right. I thought there was perhaps one or two more questions. Yes?
Why is it called Rice University?
All right, well, we're now into the trivia phase. Why is it called Rice University? This will be embarrassing to my alma mater if I can't answer that, won't it? But fortunately, I know the answer. The founder was William Marsh Rice. He was a businessman in Houston, Texas in the early 1900s, and he had a big will. He had made a fortune, and he wrote out a will. He died. And when they opened the will, all of his money went to his staff. And somebody thought that was really odd. And then they went back and looked at it, and they found out actually he was murdered. And he was murdered by his staff. And they had rewritten the will. And so when they solved all of that, they took all his money, and it went to the school, and thus it became Rice University. Man, I'm glad I could answer that. All right. Next question.
Where did you go for your business degree?
Where did I go for my business degree? I went to UC Berkeley. UC Berkeley. And again, somewhat random. I mean, it wasn't, there was no magic as to why I chose there. It was going to be maybe UT. I was still in Texas at the time. But it all worked out. All worked out. Yes?
Do you wish, do you wish you got your business degree earlier?
Do I wish I had gotten my business degree earlier? I don't think so. What I probably would have done, so I enjoyed my time in undergraduate and getting my bachelor's degree, and Rice was really good about saying you had to take a lot of courses outside your major. So even though I was a mechanical engineer, I took sculpture, I took music, I had to take a lot of different things. I wish I would have taken more business courses as an undergraduate. But it was great for me to go to work as an engineer for 3 or 4 years and kind of get a sense of how things work in the real world. I know that sounds, it's like, yeah, come on, we're all in the real world. Yeah, but kind of understand how business functions before I went back and got my business degree. Yeah. How are we doing on time? 2 or 3 minutes. Any other questions? Something I should have covered that I didn't. Someone's allowed to raise their hand and say, well, maybe other than you. I'm joking. Please.
So this happens to be mostly a computer science class.
Mhm.
You've never majored in computer science, but you use it now.
Yes, yes. And so there's a better question that I would have loved to have answered. That is a regret. I wish I had better skills in computer science. So it's still something I enjoy today. I am a lousy coder. So that story goes back to, hey, I bought myself my own PC. There weren't a lot of languages and there wasn't a lot of choice of PCs when I bought them. I taught, I learned BASIC on my own. I tried to teach myself assembly for 6502 processors on my own, and I did a little bit of that. By the time I went to university, Fortran was required, and Fortran was easy, and so I learned Fortran, but I'm guessing you're not spending a lot of time today doing Fortran, because I know I don't see a lot of use for Fortran. And I actually, in one of my jobs, I programmed in Pascal, of all things, which is kind of like a precursor to the C structures that exist today. But I don't know that stuff very well. And I would have loved, if times had been a little different, I would have loved to have taken more computer science courses, because that's something that I think is still incredibly useful, and I see ways that there's not a month that goes by that I don't see a time that I'd say, man, I wish I could just quickly go code that up. Yeah. Anything else? Well, if nothing else, I want to thank all of you. I didn't see anybody fall asleep, which was the metric I had for my success. Maybe it was a low bar, but thanks everybody.
Great.